Starts. I think we're good.
Hello, everybody. It's Kim Butler. We'll be starting shortly. This is the time when the early bird gets the worm. Welcome, guys. Glad to have you. Hey, Katie. Thanks for popping in. I guess I should have worn blue today. That's the color of choice.
Todd, you look good in blue.
He does.
As do you, Patrick.
Very complimentary color to your.
This is my
fashionable facial hair.
That's the shirt from Summit that Todd has on.
Yep.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Welcome, everybody. We'll be starting in about 3 or 4 minutes. Glad to have you. So, Patrick, the discussion with your dad, realizing that we're live, was just fun chatter or something deeper?
Oh, it's pretty deep.
Cool.
Super deep. Yeah.
Goosebumpy? You looked at your arm.
Yeah. Well, it was. It was, my brother and I always joke about what we learned from him. It's kind of a curse and a blessing, right? Which is work ethic. He's in his late 70s and just can't sit still. But we had a cool conversation about, because he was saying, well, in order for me to be fulfilled in life, I have to just keep providing value and keep working. And so I challenged that, and I was like, okay, well, what if that weren't true? Like, what if you could be fulfilled and happy without doing anything? And it was amazing. It just didn't make sense to him. And I'm like, look at Jack. Jack's over there playing. We were on the beach and on Cape Cod, and Jack was, my 7-year-old was, playing the ball. I'm like, I'm sure he's having a great time and is super happy, right? But he's not like doing anything for others. He's not like figuring out a way to be valuable. He's just happy and having a great time. He's like, well, he's in a different part of his life. And I'm like, is he really? He is at the same time, but does it really disprove the fact that you can be happy and fulfilled without doing anything? And then we got into, like, if you were happy and fulfilled, how would that impact the way in which you served and helped other people? Because going into it, if that's the contingency, anyway, it was a very deep discussion. And I didn't, because for me, I look at, a lot of what I've done, I credit to just hard work and never giving up. At the same time, I think the certain experiences, although beneficial, rob me of really enjoying some certain experiences, right? So it's helped say a lot of the lessons of business and life have taught me, that it's the whole be, do, have, as opposed to, have, do. So that's the idea, is that you can go into all experiences, whether they're with your family or whether it's business, and you embody those fulfilling, happiness, present, peaceful emotions that you really want because of why you do what you do. It actually amplifies the experience so that you can have even more of it, if that makes sense. Kind of paradoxical.
It is.
So 3 hours I got roasted in the sun because of it, but definitely worthwhile.
Super cool. Welcome, everybody. It's right at the top of the hour. We will let a little bit of time go by, our moment of grace, to get everybody signed in and ready to go. Todd and Patrick and I were just jabbering about Patrick's recent vacation and time with his dad. And I asked, he said he was in the sun for a couple hours. I said, was it just a chatterbox conversation or was it something deeper? So that's what you got to overhear. Michael's like in your office. Glad to have you, Michael, as always. Good stuff. Welcome, everybody. We'll get started shortly. We have a fun subject for today and good material to share. And always grateful for Katie being on and Elizabeth's either on or maybe watching the Facebook group or very buried in a writing project that we are working on. So I will be grateful for her regardless. Katie can handle it anyway. So with that, let's begin. I'm Kim Beller. Welcome. So glad to have you. We're going to be talking today about the typical financial planning space compared to prosperity economics. And we've been working through a sheet with about 13 or so different comparisons. And we know to be very, very careful when we compare. I'm thinking it's some president. Comparison is the thief of joy, right? So we need to be careful with that. And yet the fact is, there are many people that ask, many prospects, I should say, that ask, well, what is the difference between what you do and what everybody else does? Or how would you differentiate yourself? Or already have a financial planner or whatever they, financial advisor, insurance agent, whatever word they might use. Why do I need you in addition or instead? So when comparison is appropriate, I have found that these points are valuable for comparing, and those comparisons are available for you inside the honorary membership. So if you would like this piece of paper, I'll just put it on the camera for a minute. It looks like this, except that it does not have my scribbles on it. It is prosperityeconomics.org branded so that you can use it in front of clients. It will not lead back to Kim, Patrick, or Todd. It will lead back to prosperityeconomics.org. And all you have to do is go to prosperityeconomicsadvisors.com, which is the advisor site of our Prosperity Economics movement, and sign up for the honorary membership if you're not already. And if you are already, you just need to use your username and password, sign back in. You can get access to a variety of what are called prosperity proofs. And this is one of them. So beautiful, Katie. That's exactly what I was hoping for. Except if you wouldn't mind switching your messaging to everybody so that they can get the link, that would be great. prosperityeconomicsadvisors.com. I believe it's /membership actually, but you can find it from there. So our subject for the day is the idea that typical financial planning puts forth, which is all about accumulation of money and particularly money that stays still. Because of course, the typical financial institutions that are out there want to hold on to that money. And so the little subtitle, if you will, is assets are accumulated into accounts where they sit financially stagnant. So that's the typical financial planning side of things. Money stays still, it sits stagnant, and it's basically, though shown on our balance sheet, for the benefit of the financial institution that has it. The opposite side of that is that money moves, and your personal economy is alive and well, and money flows in and out of accounts. And we're going to have some fun talking about both cash flowing out, which means into the account, out from yourself, as well as cash flowing in, which is out of the account and into your personal economy, to yourself, where it would get then either reinvested or spent or what have you. So we'll have some good subject matters on that today. Before I turn it over to the boys, I think I will spend a little time sharing with you something that has been super, super valuable to me of late. And that is a book that I read called Untethered Aging. and notice this gorgeous lion. So if you're not looking, grab a peek at the screen. Untethered Aging. And the reason that I'm showing the cover is because if you saw the lion, you would think you were at the wrong book. Katie, if there's a chance you can grab a Smile Amazon link, Untethered Aging by William Kuyper. Oh, aren't you good? Thank you. Or whoever did that. Yeah, much appreciation. William Kuyper is a author that I've followed for a while. I don't know him. I know a couple people that know him, but I would say he's in his mid 70s, and he has a book also called Life Expectancy, which is fabulous. He is not a financial advisor. I would call him a corporate dude. He managed companies, he ran companies, he overhauled companies his entire career. And the subtitle of this book is, hold on, let me get back to it. A no-nonsense guide for practical seniors. And it has a lot of information about money and life expectancy in it. So I mentioned his earlier book is the life expectancy book. He's actually pulled that forward, and they're both worth reading, but the life expectancy book's a good 15 years old. So if you just are into one, I would start with this one. And in it are some things that I would love to share that I think you will find valuable and usable with your prospects and clients. So the idea that he puts forth is that, and this is true for anybody, he says it's for practical seniors, but doesn't matter the age. The idea he puts forth is the utter importance of positive cash flow. And in his term, positive cash flow doesn't mean passive income is exceeding expenses. It just means income of any kind is exceeding his expenses. And we'll get into this subject matter later and pull in the money stays still versus money moves discussion that we're having today. But I have just a couple of facts to share with you. They're all from the book, but they're also sourced. So I'll share with you where they come from. It's kind of interesting. And if you're a note taker, you might want to scribble them down. If you're not and you want to access the book, that's where they all are. And I just consolidated a bunch of information that he has in a few different places in the book into, I guess, a summary of what the book meant to me. And I hope it's helpful for you. So some facts. The average Social Security retirement, something most of you probably know, for a single person is $18,000 a year. Okay. Average Social Security retirement benefit for a single person. We're not talking about early, late, or anything fancy, just average. $18,000 a year, I'm rounding. For couples, it's $30,000. Okay, not necessarily double because it's not relevant, right? It's whoever earned what. Couples, $30,000. In the US, for a family of two, the poverty line is $17,000 a year. Okay, so family of two, Social Security 30, poverty 17. That's interesting. I also happen to know that worldwide, the poverty line is just under I need to do the math again. I think $900. It's $250 a day. So 2.5 times 365, $912 worldwide. And half of our world lives at that level. And my point in bringing it up is that in America, okay, arguably we have things that are more expensive. I get that, but that's still a massive gap. And it is amazing to me what we have that we want to be grateful for, that we get to live our lives with. And thankfully, this space is probably not a lot of our clients and prospects. Nevertheless, as we know, money isn't everything, but money affects everything that matters. And so as our clients and our prospects and their families and their friends, we know that that creeps out into a much wider space. I think this is just data that's helpful for us to know to present a more prosperity-oriented lens in our discussions. Because I think a lot of times it's easy to go into discussions with the US debt clock as an example, or some other thing that the individual cannot do anything about. Whereas how they spend their money, what they spend their money on, and how much they spend versus how much they save is 100% in their control. And so I'm finding myself constantly telling clients, especially when all the conversation is coming up these days of, well, what about inflation? What about gold? And, what about the stock market? And what about this? What about that? All things that we cannot control. So focus on what you can control. I think that's a helpful message. Just one other little thing to share. Quote from William Kuyper: suffering perpetual financial anxiety is no way to live. And he continues on, assigning emotional value to dollars simply slows your progress in changing the status quo, which I thought was really interesting because there are, I think, a lot of increased discussion in the marketplace about like financial planning based on spirituality, financial planning based on your values. There's actually a term for it, financial behavior, that kind of thing. And looking at it through this lens, and his second sentence of that, assigning emotional value to dollars simply slows your progress in changing the status quo. So helpful. Last thing to share, and then I'll let Todd weigh in and circle us back to our subject at hand of money in motion versus money staying still, is from the book again. Love the commentary. Thank you. And double quoted, I guess, if you will, from the Northwestern Mutual study that's done every couple of years, and you can find this online easily. That's called Planning and Progress. And this is from the 2019. Very, very relevant. It's Northwestern Mutual, right? To our business. So 2 things to share. The first is the top 6 attributes of successful living from their research. So again, this is Northwestern Mutual Planning and Progress from 2019. Top 6 attributes of success in living: spending quality time with family, being healthy, having a good relationship with your spouse or partner, being financially prepared for the future, having a good work-life balance, and being a good parent. So top 6. Number 12 was earning a high income. Number 13 was owning the home of your dreams. And number 19 was having nice belongings. So the last piece from the Northwestern Mutual study is nearly 3/4 of the people they studied, it was a big number, I don't remember how much, reported being more comfortable reducing risk to ensure the safety and stability of their savings and investments, even if it meant potential for lower returns. Nearly 3/4 reported being more comfortable reducing risk to ensure the safety and stability of their savings and investments, even if it meant potential for lower returns. So I think that is a big vote of confidence for the very guaranteed products that we like to work with. And that's a good transition into this idea of money stays still versus money moving, because a lot of our work around the whole life product, and especially around also the immediate annuity space, which is the only other product that I'm aware of that you can actually use the word guaranteed. I'm sure there's some deferred annuities that are guaranteed also, but an interesting correlation between that and money moves versus money stays still. So Todd, I'll let you begin. That was a very long introduction. I hope it was helpful. Thoughts?
Yeah. So, it's interesting. One of the things you said, and the contradiction that we hear from our clients, and it helps so much to have information like that, facts like that, really behind the scenes, because what do our clients typically come in with? Oh, what kind of rate of return can you give me? Because I can beat that. So your immediate thought, if you play that game that your client is asking you to play, is that you're actually answering a question for something they don't have an issue with. Does that make sense? And that's kind of interesting, because your initial inclination is to try to battle that and say, well, we could, we have this kind of rate, and we have this, and we could do that, and put you in some risk here or slide you there. The reality is they would rather give up some of that return for the safety aspect. And I think we're all guilty at some level of playing that game and not really putting forth the guarantee aspect of what it is that we have to offer. And so I think that's what we know from that study, is that even if the client didn't ask for that, potentially providing that information may be actually what they're looking for, and they may get that instead. So it tells us that we should do what we know we should do, and that is talk about the product in such a way as to how it fits into somebody's life properly, with the right strategies behind it, the guarantees to make sure it happens. Again, the whole story behind parallel paths, right?
Right.
So that just really solidified the fact that that's a workable side. The other thing that I would say before we get too far in is, it occurred to me today when we looked at what the topic was, and I was kind of rolling around in my mind how many things financial actually are true in our lives outside of the financial side. And that's really where the principles of prosperity came from, on all those other pieces. Yes, they're financial in nature when we use them on the economic side, but the reality is those principles also apply to the rest of our lives. And we've talked about it before, the idea of time. Yes, time is critical in money calculations, and yet, yes, that's left out quite a bit. But it's not just in money calculations, it's context in life as well. So it's a critical piece to understand how time can't be left out of a money equation, but it also can't be left out of a life equation, right? So everything fits in there. And so, to the point, that is also true on today's subject, and that's the idea of being stagnant. Money can't be stagnant. If it sits, it's like a stagnant relationship, right? We can't have that. Stagnant pieces of our lives are not enjoyable. They're not sustainable. They don't continue. And so, you have to have growth, and we have to have growth with our money. We have to have growth with everything that we do. So I think all of that fits in that context.
Well, let me add to that. What Todd talked about is what was going through my mind, especially in regards to parallel paths, right? Parallel paths it's a profound conversation because of how short and simple it is. But the question that parallel paths leads with is, what's your experience of financial planning or financial planners? And so how I would approach this topic, right? There's two ways: one with the client, one with you guys and gals as advisors. When it comes to a client, if this isn't a big concern of theirs, this is not a conversation I will have with them specifically. There may be some side conversation associated with end results, but ultimately comparing net worth versus cash flow, money movement, really isn't something I'll get into, because it may not even apply to them. That's how profound that one initial question is, right? Where what's your experience with financial planning and financial planners? And if you get to the point where you're having to explain to them the difference between net worth and cash flow, money movement, I think there's some underlying relationship challenges that exist that even a good explanation won't do the best job of resolving. So that's where that's not the topic for today. I look at this principle as something that advisors can form conviction around. So let me talk about how I view the difference between prosperity economic advisor and a typical financial planner when it comes to net worth versus cash flow or money movement. So the first thing I would say is, human beings love measurements. They love objective measurements, and I think that's why, in my opinion, people have gravitated toward net worth or the accumulation of money as something that relates to the question, how are you doing financially? It's one of the only measurements that exists, and people need measurement. If you didn't have a scale or a way in which you would interpret your health, and people didn't have that in the past. Now, when you have measurements of health, whether it's body mass index, height, weight, blood sugar levels, blood pressure, and the list goes on, right? It doesn't go off of gut or feeling or look. It goes off of objective measurements. And so I look at, again, the necessity of having objective measurements in the financial side of things, in financial life. It's paramount, because you could feel a certain way about your financial life. And I think this goes both ways, positive and negative. When you have an objective that shows you that, hey, you're doing well, it could offset a negative, pessimistic, fear-based feeling somebody has about their finances. Okay. Likewise, someone that feels really good about their finances, and it's not, objectively speaking, it's not going very well, you're able to show that and help a person really understand what a healthy financial life looks like. So anyway, I think objective measurements are profound when it comes to analyzing your financial well-being. Most people operate off of accumulation. Cash flow is more difficult, okay, because cash flow, there's additional variables potentially. But I look at cash flow as something that within a business context, okay, is paramount. It doesn't matter how big your accounts receivables are. If you don't have cash flow, you're out of business. And so I look at it from, okay, how do you measure cash flow? It's inputs and outputs, right? It's money coming in and money going out. Right now, most people associate that with budgeting, and most people don't budget very well. I think in theory, budgeting makes sense. I think the tools that exist are somewhat clunky. Vince Dodona has a really cool tool that he's going to bring to the community soon, right? I think will help with that. But I go to human behavior as it comes to cash flow, right? We realize that if we don't have money coming in consistently, the lifestyle that we have will not be sustainable. And that's I would say, current lifestyle that most of our clients, including ourselves, operate in, which is we have monthly bills, we have quarterly taxes, we have a lifestyle that requires cash flow. Usually that cash flow is a function of our personal incomes, right? With the value that we provide in the marketplace. Rarely do you find clients whose assets are producing cash flow. And that's where, again, the conversation gets really interesting, where you start to present other options in regards to cash flow. But I think the principle of cash flow is way more important to bring up initially, so that the person understands, right, where you are and what their goals are, and then back into the specific financial strategies. But from a cash flow perspective, this is something that will allow you to stand out and show your value proposition, and especially using asset flow. Asset flow, right, was really built around the principle of cash flow, because it shows how what assets become over the course of time, because you're going to have assets that accumulate, but ultimately, if it's, money is going to become, spendable, a spendable asset, it's going to go to the government, or it's going to go to charity, or it's going to go to somebody else. Or it's going to get spent. Ultimately, that's what any asset is going to become. And so I think people really like the conversation of cash flow. That's because it's what they really want, because that's what supports their lifestyle. And they don't want cash flow just coming from themselves, because they see inherent limitation. One other limitation, because can you continue to work at the same level for the rest of your life? Most people, even though that's not what I believe, most people are conditioned to believe that. And in order to recondition them, it takes a long time to uncondition them. So that's where I would say, again, the conversation around cash flow, getting them to understand the principle is paramount, so that when you actually present financial strategy with them, whether it's the products include life insurance, the products include other financial products, that's besides the point. The principle is really what you want to support with those product and service recommendations. So that's the first thing. The second thing I would say, especially in regards to net worth and cash flow is actually an abundant conversation. Net worth is a scarcity conversation, because when somebody spends net worth, they feel opportunity cost, even though they don't characterize that feeling as opportunity cost, an economic principle. They feel that because they're taking and they're reducing, okay, in order to consume. And that consumption, right, what they consume won't ever be there again. And so they realize that, when you're eating net worth and you're consuming it, it's not there anymore. And that is an uncomfortable feeling for people, where you find a lot of scrimpers and savers ultimately get to 65 years old and have a really hard time spending their money, right? Because they've just been conditioned to keep it there and spend what they earn. So I think that's a very pessimistic, it engages fear, it engages pessimism. And I think that's also some of those emotions and feelings that are helpful to us, because that's likely what people want to get away from. They don't want to feel that. They want to feel those feelings of abundance. And that's what cash flow does, especially consistent cash flow. And it's more short term. It's more based on the lifestyle that they that most people want to create and improve on. So the other thing I would say is measuring cash flow, getting clients into this habit, into this behavior is going to be important, because there's a part of our brain that is conditioned to consume everything. And it's the limbic part of our brain, where if there's something to buy, we buy it. When you give a person, especially you give a person unlimited, look at the government, give them an unlimited amount of money and debt ceiling, they just keep buying and buying and buying and buying. They don't do it consciously, I would say, or at least the majority of their motivation isn't conscious. It's subconscious, based on that part of our brain that tells us and compels us to buy, spend, consume. That's the limbic part of our brain that we're all conditioned, in a sense, or biologically wired, right, to have to appease. And so I would say, understanding that, now you are able to put parameters in place so that you don't cave to your subconscious primal state, right, which usually doesn't end very, very well, especially in a more progressive society. And so I look at, again, cash flow is something where, even if you have earned income and bills, making sure that you're cash flow positive every month, that's a measurement. Most people will not get that measurement accurate if they're going off of gut. And they're going to overestimate the amount that they earn and underestimate the amount that they spend. It's at least been my experience. And so having a conversation, maybe not initially, but as you continue to educate and provide value to clients, you want to have them be able to score and objectively measure their cash flow. And I think that's vital, especially when it comes to different financial moves over the course of time, whether that's taking accumulated cash value or other assets and annuitizing them and turning them into cash flow. There's a variety of different moves in the future, but it all rests on that principle of cash flow, which ultimately is what they really want. So I could keep going, but I know that I'm sure.
No, that's fabulous.
Have some response to that.
I'll add in a couple things. First of all, Katie, would you find for Jim Beloga the blog post that Todd and Elizabeth did that says 87 is the new 65? Because his question is really good, and it picks up on what Patrick's addressing, which is how do we get people off of this societal limitation of age 65? And sometimes having facts, which is what the Truth Concepts blog post will give you, is valuable. Sometimes it's more about talking with them, asking what's important, having them go through some self-reflection, having them realize some of the information themselves rather than us just shedding it to them. We share information here with you guys. That's not necessarily how I would share it with a client. I prefer to use questions to get them to self-acknowledge, self-realize, I think. Back to Vince and his parallel paths training, which we'll continue to get more of in our summits going forward. I remember him saying, actually, I was overhearing him talk to another advisor, but he was saying, just be with them. The person said, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to show. Doesn't matter. Just be with them as a human being, be with them. Because cash flow is, I think, the single hardest thing to do in personal finance. Like, there's 1,400 ways to get money to grow, but very, very few ways to get money to spit off monthly income that's reliable in any form or fashion. And interestingly enough, just this week, I don't have a lot of clients in their 70s, but I had two that were either just retired or going to retire in their 70s. So thank goodness, at least they're on the other side of 70 instead of the 65 side. Their mental space is amazing to listen and observe. And it was all over the phone. So I wasn't watching, but I think about, okay, here you are in your mid to late 70s, potentially struggling with like getting your mind around some things and making some decisions and whatnot. And you want to get into an investment that has a whole bunch of variability and you have to make decisions about every 2 or 3 years and is unknown and can roller coaster ride and all the other things that we know about so many typical investments. I am not a skilled single premium immediate annuity person at all, but I'm learning and I know that I need to become more skilled at conversing around that product because of the guarantees that it can do. If anybody has some suggestions, I would be more than open for it because it is something, going back to that Northwestern Mutual quote, so many people looking for certainty, which is one of the 12 principles that the prosperity economics movement espouses, is certainty, not security, very different word, certainty. And so many people are looking for that. And we have the tools. And that's a wonderful thing that we can rely on. I know I personally just need to get better at helping bridge the gap between the tool, the product, if you will, and the client and what they're feeling, and then helping them with the decisions that can increase that certainty. Todd, will you just give us a little bit of a verbal sneak peek on one of the things that you're doing with the truth concepts calculators that will enable us to do a better job of showing these kinds of things to our clients?
Sure. I think, like Kim said, the facts have to be there. Like Patrick said, we need the facts to back it up. But it's hard for people to look at numbers and understand what they actually say or mean. And then it invites comparison. Everything has to have balance, and it has to be the appropriate time. You have to be invited into the comparison, not cause one, right? So any of those kind of things. But when we talk about numbers, it's hard for people not to say, well, what if we just make it 2.25 instead of 2.15? I mean, you get into this mess of battling numbers all the way through. And when we're trying to get a concept across, really people, I think, see better in pictures. And that's part of what we're doing with the new side of Truth Concepts, is have the facts behind it, have accurate charts to be able to see what that is so that we can actually internalize it and see. And what I have found, which is kind of interesting to me, I can see the numbers. I see pictures when I look at the numbers. Not a lot of people are like that. And still, for me, seeing the graphs, while I've been working on this project for the last month or so far, I have seen things in it that I didn't know existed, just because I could see it in context of pictures versus the numbers. So it's really helpful, and that's a big direction of where we're going, which I think will help get our clients there without trying to beat them up with numbers. Have the numbers for the accuracy, but not beat them up with the numbers, and get them to see what's going on. Because going back to what Patrick said, we need a way to measure. We can't just go out there and wing it completely. And some of it we talk in concepts, absolutely, but at some point it's got to come down to the proof, the numbers. But ideally, we do it in a way that people can absorb it rather than being overwhelmed. So that's our desire and our direction.
I've had a couple of some really cool conversations with existing clients, because again, I think the conditioning side of things is important to understand, where if you teach somebody something once, twice, 3 times, 10 times, especially something that has been conditioned for so long, it's very difficult for them to just switch gears and suddenly believe something that's new. So what I would say is ongoing conversation, et cetera, marketing, writing, blogging, videos is vital to keep these principles in the forefront of their minds, because chances are you're the only place they're getting it from. But recently I had some conversations with clients, right, that I found interesting, where I look at, again, the idea of investing. I'm not against investing, but I look at the time and energy and focus that goes into it because people think they should invest. And I find it fascinating where, if I ask the question, well, what if investments didn't exist? What if you can only, do whole life and focus on improving your business or your profession, right? And again, it doesn't mean that that's reality, because it's not. There's always the option to make investment, but invariably with these conversations, and the sample size isn't that big. Okay, they just go to, well, I'd just make more money and I'd have a more certain way to earn a good return with a ton of certainty. I said, okay, well, what if that put you further ahead than making an investment, right? What would be true for you? And those questions, just how they respond is really fascinating, right? Because again, the time and energy and focus that goes into investment, if that was spent on improving yourself and figuring out ways to invest in your business, improve your own cash flow, being more valuable, that to me is available with most professions these days, or in most businesses. But yet there's huge opportunity costs by focusing on maybe a marginal improvement to rate of return by finding better ways to invest. But this is where I'll deviate. And one of the conversations I had with clients was this individual is a transaction attorney in the healthcare industry. And we had, set some foundational things up, and he was like, should I look into real estate? Should I look into, cryptocurrency? And I said, well, go to where you're most familiar. You're a transaction attorney. You understand the objective ways to measure a successful practice, a successful building in order to do the acquisition. That's your job. Obviously, you're not an accountant, but you get exposure to pretty much all the financials, and why certain things are valued a certain way. How could you bring that expertise into looking at 10Ks and looking at pro formas and seeing how you can analyze, right, healthcare companies that are out there that may be trading well below book value, right? And again, it's one of those, it's an extension of his expertise. And I think sometimes we think that investment needs to be way outside of our wheelhouse, and you have to trust a professional in order to do it well. I think there's some expertise that people gain, right, based on their role, based on their business, that they can now take and apply, right, to making an investment in something. But it's a more educated investment, which obviously mitigates risk, right? So in the end, I look at, again, do you need investment? I don't think you do. I think you can really improve your income, build up your business and the equity in your business, so that you just need a decent rate of return, tax efficient rate of return. I think I'm open to that. And I think most people should do that, because the rate of return they're getting by taking all this risk, right, ends up being what whole life produces anyway, if you set it up the right way. So that's how I look at it. Even though I'm not against investment, I make investment to learn certain things about different companies, because I want to take some concepts and things that I learn and apply that to my own business ultimately.
I made the comment about human life value, and that term we get so used to just from a death benefit calculation, wherein if we'll expand that, which is of course how our clients think about it when they first hear the term, is what is the value of me, and what can they do to invest in that and increase that then will do so much good. So you want to talk about the multiplier effect, which is our subject for next month. That's a fabulous multiplier effect. So I have a question for our community that's on the call today. I would just love a vote in the chat box. And the question, I have a little prep, and then I'll ask the question and make it a yes or no answer so that you can put your vote in the chat box. So a lot of what we've been discussing can be part of what you might call a sales process or a client process. And I know for myself, it has enabled me to be more efficient, more effective. So more efficient, get more done quickly, more effective, actually get the work done and get the results from the work that I want when I have a process. And this is something that Dan Sullivan has been teaching forever and ever. And I think sometimes gets really misunderstood. because it doesn't need to be this big, long 7-step thing. It can be as simple as the parallel paths with it's literally less than 7 minutes of conversation. It can even be faster than that. I'm able, because of all of the, Patrick mentioned it, books, podcasts, blog posts, et cetera, which does not come overnight, comes with many, many, many years of layering and work. I'm able to, and I think you guys are too, even though you don't maybe have that much stuff out there, get to the financial heart of the matter super quickly on a call, because people know that they are there to discuss their personal finances. And so to bring these two things together, the idea of a sales process does not have to be a super formal, take forever 14-step thing. It can literally be a few questions. And so the question that I have for you, and so I would love to have a vote in the, or an answer, I guess, in the chat box, is do you have an identifiable process? An identifiable, like, yes, my process is these 3 questions or these 5 steps. So yes and no. Love to see the yeses. This is good. I want to see the no's also, or I'm going to assume your answer is no. And I'm curious about the results because we have X number of people on the call. I'm curious the percentage of who feels like they have, thank you guys, an identifiable process and who doesn't. And I am going to trust that we can continue to do some work around this space, because I'm guessing, although I'm pretty impressed with the yeses that I'm seeing. I'll count these later unless Katie wants to scroll and count them. I was going to guess that we would see more no's, and that may not be the case. I'm seeing a lot more yeses fly by than I can count. So that's good news. And I'm going to encourage that, because the work with the process, the having of a process, first of all, the using of the process, and the ability to be so confident in that process that you can shift based on the client situations. This is not about cookie cutter stuff, is what enables you to be more efficient and more effective. So this is what I'm curious about. Patrick, some thoughts to add?
Yeah, I had a couple of thoughts. I mean, and this idea was popularized by Stephen R. Covey. I thought he created it, but I was told that he wasn't, but he popularized the whole idea of rocks, right? Where if you had to fill up a jar and you had rocks, pebbles, and sand, okay, how would you fill up the jar, right? You don't start with the sand, you don't start with the pebbles, right? You start with the big rocks, and then you slowly put in pebbles and sand to fill everything up. So most people, I would say, aren't able to digest more than, a couple of changes, a couple of things to do at any given time. And so just as much as we have a process for initial relationship to establish 1 rock, 2 rock, 3 rocks. Okay, do we have a return path, right? And this is something that is definitely a void in my business, which we've done a decent job of rectifying, and we have some really cool plans to do even more. But it's the ability to continually talk to clients and do it on a scaled basis, where we're filling in the pebbles and filling in the sand, and continuing to build relationship, teach principle. And, I think over the course of time, clients' lives change. And so those rocks also change. And so just as much as, an initial sales process or client process is vital to establishing relationship, just because you go on a first date with somebody doesn't mean they're going to marry you. There has to be continual dates. And even if you get married and you stop dating, chances are that marriage isn't going to last, right? So it's not just the initial process, but something that I found is a huge opportunity is an ongoing return path, okay, that is scalable. I found that just observing the industry for as long as I have, there's some really profound initial conversations, strategy software. It's amazing how much innovation has improved it. I still see one of the biggest shortcomings of our industry is being able to have those pebbles and sand conversations over the course of time in a scalable way, right? Whether it's using technology, whether it's using email or blog posts, right? More scalable tools for conversation, communication, education, it's not going to happen with an individual's manual effort. That's at least what I've found, unless you only want to work with 50 to 100 people total, which I know that is well below what some of the people on this webinar are currently working with. So I would love to know what you guys have found successful with your return path, with your infinite client journey and process, not just the initial stages.
So Patrick's use of the word return path, HubSpot shows it like a flywheel. So a lot of times people will refer to a funnel, like clients or prospects come in and then they become clients and then they kind of go out and fall into the netherland. The HubSpot, so HubSpot.com has put forth the idea that that is not a road to a successful, sustainable business. Instead, it's a flywheel where that return path, if you will, just keeps coming back and going over and over and over again. And I think all of us struggle with, because of the way that we're paid, the necessity of continuing those conversations, the learnings, et cetera. And so for you, if you're looking for an action item from this, first of all, super, super important to not get in the gap. Patrick has X million podcast episodes. Somebody else has books. Somebody else is great at doing, there's another really good one-to-many webinars. I had something else in my head and it went. But anyway, it is important for you. Two things I think I can give you for action items. One, it's important for you to pick one method to start with and not try to water down and do all. So pick the one that is most natural to you. If you'd like to speak to podcasts, if you'd like to do blog posts, or maybe that will lead into books. If you like to do videos. And then secondly, the value of adding in and possibly even leading with your own messaging. So Tammy Brannon, my sister, with her blueprint process, calls this bullhorn messaging. Matt Sanford, I think I saw your name on, turned it into just bullhorning, which I thought was great. And that's what sets you apart, so that you're not just like everybody else out there jabbering about a product and what it does when you don't even know if the person is right for that product, which is back to my earlier commentary, why I think it's so valuable to ask about personal financial situations up front. If somebody doesn't have an existing savings account and the ability to put money away on a monthly basis, two simple questions that nobody else is asking, right? How much is in your savings account? And do you have the ability to put money away on a monthly basis? Like save as a verb. So save as a noun and then save as a verb. Two questions. Why are we conversing with them before we know that information? Because then we're just jabbering. We're just spilling information. And so often I think we love our product so much that we want to get out there and share it, when we would serve the prospect so much better, as well as ourselves, by asking a couple simple questions up front. And if conversation is needed up front, let it be about your bullhorn message, that sets you apart. Todd and I listened to a quick video yesterday from Gino Wickman that wrote the book E-Leap. E stands for entrepreneurial leap. And he was talking about his dad, who was a real estate trainer for like 40 years. And he had a saying that he would use over and over again. And it's the cause, not the corporation. It's the cause, C-A-U-S-E, not the corporation, not the company, not even the person, really, right? It's the cause. So what I love about the prosperity economics movement is it lets the three of us have a cause that's bigger than ourselves. Each of you have that cause. So whether you want to call it purpose, cause, mission, vision, bullhorn, whatever term you're using, that is a very viable, very either attractive or repelling, which is good, message to put out there that you can do so easily if you can get it clear in your mind, which either takes some self-reflection or some time with somebody like Tammy to get it clear. And that sets you apart much, much more than talking about prosperity economics versus typical financial planning, or whole life insurance versus universal life insurance, or whatever it is versus whatever it is that we think and is interesting. It's more interesting to us than it is to the person that's listening to it. So thank you, Katie, for sharing Tammy's Blueprint Process website. And she actually has some things on her website that you can go and look at and potentially use to sort this out for yourself without her help. It's like anything in life. If you want quicker results and better results, or I should say even better, paying for a coach can get you those. So I encourage that for those of you that are ready to take that step. But there's some things there that you can use to gather it on your own. All righty. Todd, any last thoughts as we wrap up?
No, I just think it's really interesting how all this stuff comes full circle. And, I think we need to keep things in perspective. It's important to have the facts. It's important, especially for ourselves, to have the facts and know what we're telling our clients is correct. But there has to be balance, and we have to listen for when it's appropriate to share that with our clients versus just hearing them out and hearing what their direction is. And I would say that it's almost never, I say almost in there because never always gets me in trouble. There might be that time, but for the most part, there's, to use numbers or anything else to prove a client wrong, it's usually not a good idea.
Patrick?
Yeah, this may seem somewhat strange, but yeah, my final thought is looking really at the bullhorn message. That's what sets us apart, and I believe process, right, and structure is what creates what we all want, which is relationships for life. And so the connection I made, I'm going to put the onus on my 15-year-old daughter, because she got into Taylor Swift the last 3 months, and it's nonstop. And I found a pattern in Taylor Swift. I think she has a decent bullhorn message, but she does not solidify relationships very well. She continues to go on dates and continues to have flings, but ultimately doesn't experience, right, the true value of a relationship, because she's missing her return path. She's missing her client journey. So don't be Taylor Swift. Well, and she'll figure it out one of these days, I'm sure, right? But just as much as, we have compelling message, everyone on here is doing business. So something that you're saying or doing is connecting with people. At the same time, I really look at what our charge is, right? Which is to create these relationships for life. We set up products that are going to be with people for the rest of their life and going to make an impact on their family. It's not a single transaction. So I think understanding that is vital, and then starting to leverage the tools that exist to organize your business. We've talked recently a lot about frameworks, and we've taught some of those frameworks in Summit, and there's some other areas of the PEM website that you can gain access to that. But the idea is to create the structure and then start to build in that structure. And as Kim said, right, the most important thing that we can do is have meaningful relationships with people, which requires meaningful conversation. And I think you guys all do that well. At the same time, that creates the relationship, but does not maintain, let alone grow, build, nurture that relationship. And so I look at media, and what we know, media has infinite leverage, right? You can record a video once, it can be watched 1 billion times. You can record a podcast once, it can be listened to 1 billion times. You can't have 1 billion conversations. It's just not possible. And so really looking at, again, the components of principles that you want to help recondition your client, because they already have certain principles they believe in. You want to condition them into what it is we believe in, what we found to be true. what they've essentially bought off on and have transacted with, and continuing to condition them over the course of time. If you try to do it manually, it's just not going to work out. And so finding that infinite leverage within technology or media, it's really the only way to do it. So those are my final thoughts. Don't become, don't repeat the Taylor Swift cycle.
Something that was interesting that just jumped out at me when you were talking just now, so many people look at a process as something that's confining, but really the process is what gives you the freedom to be able to express your bullhorn message. Because if you've got the process handled, you don't have to worry about what stage you're in or what's going on, and you're able to actually share from your heart your true bullhorn message. So it gives you that freedom to be able to do it. And it's why we really encourage a process.
It's like, I'm not going to, it's like riding a bike that has 21 gears. It's like, I'm not going to be able to pedal as fast, right? If I'm in, 21st gear. It's like that I am in first gear, second gear. Like, yeah, but you're going to go way farther.
All right. Much appreciation for all of you. We've got a couple dates to pay attention to. We'll be back here on September 1st for another webinar. September 22nd through the 24th, Todd's Truth Training in Houston, Texas, in the airport there, Airport Marriott. And then October 28th and 9th for the virtual summit. That's a Thursday and Friday. So September 22nd through 24th, Truth Training, and Summit for Advisors, October 28th and 29th. Much appreciation to you all. There's information about Truth Training at truthconcepts.com. There you go, Katie. Thank you. And yes, nothing is happening August 7th. Thank you, Chris, for asking. That was an error. I am sorry for that. Today is August 7th. Today is the webinar, August 4th. And the 7th was a mistake. So appreciate you asking. All right. Appreciate you all. Thanks, Patrick and Todd.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Enjoy.
See you next time.
Thanks.